Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wake Up Missoula. I'm your host, Scott Ramf, here to usher you into Friday, May 5th. This picture that you see behind me is courtesy of Reddit, a post that was from the rodeo from last Saturday. So when we had a quick little thunderstorm overnight on Saturday, we had a little bit of a rainbow just over the M. So you get to enjoy that courtesy of Reddit. So we're going to jump right in. Some things that are happening in the news and beyond. You know, we got a new pope this week, a lot of things happening. The Indian-Pakistan war technically has kind of begun, even though it's kind of like a weird conflict. We'll talk a little bit more about it later on the show, but there's definitely a lot of interesting things happening for sure. Our own Greg Gianforte vetoed a bill that would have banned polyurethane, which is the basic chemical carcinogen that's in styrofoam, hence the food containers that you get or those little styrofoam cups that they just kind of like hand out to places when you need some like hot coffee. So that we'll talk about that and more, but we're going to go into the first city council after they took about a week off, and this one is just, you know, just under 4 hours long. Much of it had to do with the coalition that Christian Jordan and Daniel Carlino pushed to ensure Johnston Street Shelter gets funding through August 2026 instead of this year. Spoiler alert, they did not get what they wanted. But the city kicked off things with a few proclamations highlighting the efforts to bring awareness to Murdered and Missing Indigenous Peoples Day for May 5th. The two other highlighted public service awareness. They got this whole week. Another topic is grants, funds, and allocation of federal grants that impact urban development through many lenses of Missoula from the Poverella, Homeward, United Way of Missoula, and Partnership Health. Many of these and more went to get help. Go to help struggling folks in Missoula and increase the amount of affordable homes and options for folks to get into a rental at least. Lennox Flats is yet another one of those projects the city has in mind to support affordable housing near the courthouse in downtown Missoula. It's surprisingly close to the Palace Apartments, which works the same. So there's your kind of like overview of what's happening, but we're going to jump right in. They're looking to leverage about $877,000 for this $1.5 million investment in those programs, affordable housing projects. They use grants for a lot of these helps to pay for those grants in the first place. So it's leveraging grants by putting in-kind matching funds. Eric Legbold from Housing Solution Fund through United Way of Missoula spoke on those services a little bit further, and this is what he had to say.
It serves as a multi-generational safety net for Missoulians, supporting families, individuals, and seniors alike. Whether it's helping a single parent avoid eviction, covering a security deposit for a young adult leaving foster care, or restoring utilities for an elderly resident. The Housing Solutions Fund provides timely, flexible support that protects housing stability across every stage of life. It's not just a short-term fix, it's an investment in long-term community resilience and well-being. Program impact as of November 1st, 2024. Starting in November 1, 2021, we have provided resources to 715 households. That is roughly 2,000 individuals since. Roughly $528,000 in assistance since. From July 1 through November 1, 2024, we provided assistance to roughly 240 households, equating to 479 individuals. That was $236,451 appropriated or given to beneficiaries.
All right, and so those are some of the benefits that these programs help Missoulians alike. Centralized Housing Solution and Human Resource Council have been instrumental in helping folks stave off eviction with energy services like heat and cooling for the Human Resource Council, and United Way cutting checks for folks falling just short of their rent, and even bus fare to another city that has resources to help individuals. As we get through the meat and potatoes, the Clark Fork River is also looking to get some open space protections through purchases and allocations. They're looking to essentially look at what's called the Tip Clark Fork River Project, named after Brian Tip, the landowner who bought those 16 acres of land, and the purchase for the city is $112,000 for this project. The owner plans to donate the remainder, $117,000 of the value of this land to the city as in-kind donation. So here is Zach Covington with Open Space Lands Manager, talks about the site and their intent with it as well.
On the left hand side, that map is showing conservation easements and protected areas. In this particular case, there's no easements, but there are protected areas in the light green owned by the city. The dark green is Forest Service property. On the right side, it shows current zoning, and it's located in the unincorporated area. So county zoning is resource and open lands. Both of these maps are land cover and vegetation maps, and show generally that the site is covered in riparian and or wetland vegetation. So these maps are just lining up with our on-the-ground assessments of the property.
And if you were to take an interesting look at the site, it's pretty much undevelopable. And so part of this land purchase is to kind of mitigate erosion and help deal with a lot of those things. And a big chunk of this land is wetland, and there's no incentive to develop on it in what they call an unbuildable floodway. And also a big chunk of the land is already a portion of the 100-year floodplain. This would be good for trying to get access to King William trails to the Clark Fork River, as their ultimate goal is to have river access with little erosion for foot traffic overall. And, you know, speaking of traffic, parking. We have a parking commission director, Jody Pilgrim, talk about the changes she made to the urban parking and what they're going to be doing in the future.
Going and counting each individual space and then setting it up in our license plate recognition system so that our scooters can drive through the area and count cars. And so that's where our public process starts. And we take a couple months of that utilization data and start doing the public process around it, which involves placing that map on our Engage page for the public to comment on, and then going out to different community meetings to share information about where that map is, how people can have their voices heard. So we've looked at the hip strip already, and we've started that outreach process through visiting with the neighborhood council for the riverfront neighborhood and for the university neighborhood. And that will be the first expansion that we propose. Whether this amended ordinance language is passed or not, that will be coming to council. But that is a big part of what we at the Parking Commission do already.
All right, so a big chunk of what they're doing is updating the overall map and the additional kiosk / metering of parking. So I got a map for you just to kind of have an idea of what they kind of want to do. This is your general downtown Missoula area with the metered parking in purple. And with the dashes, that's the one that's pretty much the parking kiosks and whatnot. But as you go further down the hip strip, you see a lot more purple areas they want to eventually put kiosks and quote unquote metered parking. So pay for parking in those general areas. The hip strip is the plan moving forward, and so far the city has allowed the expansion. But so far this is just a start of the growth of the Parking Commission purview of metered parking on the hip strip. You know, I thought they were going to cover most of the blue sections in that map I showed you, which also includes Hellgate High School, but it seems like they're slowly moving into more of the hip strip places, maybe to help mitigate some of the high school drivers to Hellgate, to mitigate them from parking off of the hip strip. So that's one of those things that they're working with. They've probably talked to local businesses, residents about this, but yeah, there's definitely an interesting thing moving forward with that. And it's definitely worth looking into because there's a lot of people in Missoula who have axe to grind against the Parking Commission. And yeah, we're a growing city, and this is their proposal moving forward with rate changes, expansion of area, and just other things going on right now. So now we get through all the basic stuff. We're going to jump into the continuation of funding the Johnson Street Shelter. Christian Jordan City Council talked about the resolution to help keep funding the shelter, and this is what she had to say.
As a constituent, I think it's hard to understand how we can come up with numbers for 3 positions when we talk about budget shortfalls, and maybe I'm missing this, but I'm also speaking on behalf of my constituents who reached out and asked me about this. And I also think that it shows where our priorities are. Our priorities are really to enforce the ordinance, which is definitely anti-homelessness, in my personal opinion, because we are telling the folks where they can't go, but we don't have any resources for where they can go.
All right. And so part of their argument is that the money that's being spent on the ordinance to prevent camping and the security for essentially kicking people out of these areas should be going towards funding this as well. Danny Carlino, City Council, elaborated further about using the budget in favor than against homeless people, and this is what he had to say. Hold on a second.
And because of, the Supreme Court's decision, it's helped guide Missoula government's budget priorities around homelessness, which then the City Council has passed local ordinances like the 12.60 to give misdemeanor charges for people who are survival camping or living in their vehicles. And I think rather than putting that as our budget priority towards criminalizing homelessness and adding to the budget for that, I believe that we should make a budget priority to provide shelter space.
Yeah, so that is definitely the reasoning behind the two people who are sponsoring this resolution. They dealt away with many urban camping tickets over the decade ago, as they were just kind of printing tickets with little to no effort in getting folks to pay those fines, as they just went further into poverty as a result. So that was kind of like the Obama era, the 10-year goal to end homelessness. And that time, that's the thing about government and politics, is that there's really a lot of short-term memory going on with a lot of those policies moving in place. And there's money that was put into those programs, and now most of those monies are gone, and the city doesn't feel like they want to dip into the general fund to help pay for these things. And many city council members are supportive, but are very unclear about the data collected by Carlino and Johnson on the financial implications of what they want and what they're asking for. So here's Myrta Becerra with the response.
Our personal opinions should not be what guide our budget decisions. So, someone with a data background as you, it would be great to have that information in front of us. Some sort of analysis of how is this personnel or staff not being effective enough at using the taxpayers' dollars that we keep putting into those positions. So without, having that information, it's really hard for me to make a decision. It's not because it's not because I don't like, a referral. It's just, I think it's important for us and the public. It is our job as representatives to make sure that we have all the information when we're going to make a decision, and for the public to know that as well.
Yep, and from what I've interpreted from many of these back and forths and during this meeting is that many city councils members believe that the shelter isn't something they want to keep, especially in an area where Johnson Street lives. As a tale of two cities, it's a tale of two city council members wanting to keep things in operation, while other side seems this land is an opportunity to kick off our Midtown master plan project with the phase 2 of Railroad Park. Mayor Andrea Davis talks about the programs in place to help these folks and improve those systems rather than devote money towards a singular location, or in this case, we have those two shelter locations, which is Johnson and Poverello Center for your typical homeless, as opposed to affordable housing options for other people who are getting into housing. So we're just talking about the shelter level stuff right now.
I will take this moment to say that we are under our pre-pandemic homelessness numbers, and that is saying something in a community that has had exceptionally high real estate prices that go through the roof. So our coordinated entry and our by name list actually show that our folks living houseless, whether that be in shelters, that's inclusive of the YWCA, or that's inclusive of the temporary safe outdoor space, and then the Poverello Center's facility on Broadway and Johnson Street, amongst a few others. That's inclusive of all those and folks that we can find living outdoors. Those numbers have been reduced to under pre-pandemic levels, largely because of the efforts of the staff that I just mentioned.
All right. So, yeah, there's a lot of things moving forward. They're looking at the data, and efforts for the city to go back to the old numbers of homeless folks in the pre-pandemic world is surprising to me. But the many programs and these federal dollars to leverage places like the Bellagio and Trinity Navigation Center, many of those were put into place to house those same people. I mean, of course, are we out of the woods when it comes to homelessness? No. I remember the city talking about outdoor space for by reserve. That was way too hard to manage, and the city felt that the liability was too great to manage. That site was mixed to low barrier shelter system with controlled camping within a zone. Worked for some, but for not so much for the city, since they were seeing some issues with security contractors at that time. And they decided not to continue that process in that section as they try to get people moving closer to the Johnson Street shelter. So Amber Sherrill, City Council, tries to rein in the thinking behind some of these proposals, and this is her response to Carlino and Jordan.
If you have $3, you cannot spend 10. I mean, that's just not how it works. And so we don't have $10 to spend. So I don't, as I said on Wednesday, I don't see a plan here. I don't see funding here. No one, the mayor is saying we don't have that money. So if you want to find that money, you have to figure out where it is. And the thing that was sent to us by Ms. Jordan today absolutely cut all those things. If you're cutting those positions and you're not talking to staff about what those positions do and how they support the city's work, I mean, it is a Doge approach to just slashing everything. You need to understand what those positions are doing so you know what you're cutting. And that absolutely is what is being cut based on the thing that we were sent this afternoon.
Yeah, so many city council members were basically blasting Carlino and Christian Jordan for being very short-sighted when it comes to the budget and just trying to be wishful thinkers, so which, you know, isn't the worst thing in the world, but as it becomes clear and clear, the main focus of this meeting just dissected their attempts to allocate funds from one place to another with little means to explain the funding. That was just one of the major reasons why the city decided to close the shelter, just because those additional funds just kind of dried up and it would be too cost ineffective to do so. It is a weird situation overall, because if I remember correctly, before the pandemic, the city had very little stake in the homelessness, and it was just the winter of like 2018 through 2019 when they decided to support the winter shelter for only the winter, and now we're getting to a point where, yeah, there's a lot of interesting things happening right there, and it is backtracking to the most part, but we're going to jump in. We're going to talk about some public comments about some of the reaction. Sage Bennett, resident, who's been basically decrying the support for homelessness basically since the beginning and has been given regular public comment, gave her public comment on this.
That they don't have the funding and the resources to be able to do, and yet when this all falls through the cracks, it's going to be on their shoulders because your hands are tied financially. And you keep saying that. And we all know that budgets can be moved around. I understand that you feel like there is some critical parts of this budget. I guess all I am saying is that we are failing the people who have the least amount of resources in our community, who are endangered the most in our community. I am very grateful for the Johnson Street shelter and very grateful for the Poverello. And I have heard stories of pregnant women only being given the very minimum of meals, if you can even count it as that. And where will they go and what will they eat after the Johnson Street shelter is closed?
All right, so that was that. And Sage also mentioned that she lost faith in the city as the sweeps that were meant to clean up the folks' encampments where people's belongings were supposed to be safe, but instead disposed of. So she was very critical of that situation. And the city and staff elected officials to have, to read the tea leaves, and those dollars are gone, and they can't simply wave a magic wand to have money to solve this. So, however, in the light of Johnson Street closure, they have nearly 6 months eviction notice. I can't tell you how many places in Montana might be legally inclined to give notice of eviction for, more than 30 days in general. There's the 3-day notice to pay or vacate. There's the 14-day notice to comply or quit. There's a 30-day notice for terminating a month-to-month for tenants. A 30-day notice is required. So, it is a unfortunate nature, but if there's an end to a semi-permanent shelter, then that could be an opportunity for a lot of them to move out. But at the same time, some who struggle, and there's who struggle more. It's all a numbers game. So you can't guarantee one person's going to benefit from this versus one person's going to suffer more for this. That's just the way it is. And at the height of the pandemic, it seemed like there was quite a lot of waiting lists for just general renters, with just people needing at least 3 months to look for housing options, as their rentals became apparently short-term with the 30-day eviction notice for many of them. It's the two schools of thought are related to the fact that there is no Johnson Street shelter, but there is the Poverello, which could be the home base that can be used to connect to services that will remain, even if there is no location for low barrier shelter. At the same time, you see the city budget for developers reaching heights of $59.9 million Russell Street project, but you cannot come up money for $1.8 million to run a Johnson Street shelter. It's kind of backwards when we really think about it, but most of the money in federal government, state government, they're very much highlighting development, infrastructure, the place we live in, rather than the people who live in those places. So unless we kind of curve those thinking processes for beyond with the big, deep pockets, then we're kind of stuck in this weird snake eating its own tail kind of situation. But Stacey Anderson, City Council, puts a nice cherry on the top for the city's opinion on this particular matter.
Where there's a will, there's a way, or if we just work together, we could make this happen. I think the questions that myself and some of the other fellow council members asked were to highlight the fact that that is not a true statement. I think all of us around here, I know that as soon as I got the email this afternoon, looked at it, looked at the spreadsheet, looked at the numbers, asked questions, because I wanted to see what was being proposed so that I could come educated and prepared. So to just say that, we knew it wasn't going to pass and we just wanted to have a discussion about it, really, I think is really disingenuous, because, there are new ideas that are brought to this table that are, change the way we look at things. But there's a lot of work that goes into that behind the scenes, talking to staff, talking to council members, talking to stakeholders, and really bringing a robust plan forward. And I think that what Ms. Cheryl said, that it does feel like part of this was just to, show that some people on this council may theoretically care more than others. And I just fundamentally, categorically disagree with that.
All right, so there's kind of like the overall sentiment between the two city council members who want to keep the Johnson Street shelter versus the rest of them. It's just the way it is. And, as we're even talking about the budget, we had that 4-hour meeting last Wednesday in committee meetings called Budget and Finance Committee, and they spoke about the budget with the following departments: Missoula Redevelopment Agency, Community Planning, Development Innovation, CPDI, Parks and Recreation, and finally Public Works. So I'll give a little taste of everything for you guys, including some interesting things that are happening out of the Parks Department, which I find is pretty interesting, since I am on the board of the Friends of Fort Missoula. They got a grant, but we're going to jump over to the Missoula Redevelopment, and Ellen Buchanan talks about the most successful program coming out of the MRA, and this is what she had to say.
The big things that we spend money on and that I'm kind of proudest of in terms of programs is our deconstruction program. We have, several years ago, we created a policy, if you will, that says if your building can be deconstructed and those materials can be reused, if you want to use tax increment financing to pay for that, that's what you're going to have to do. And if you choose to just demolish it and take it to the landfill for expediency's sake or whatever, then it's your nickel as a developer to take care of that. And we have literally been responsible for the recycling and reuse of a ton of materials in Missoula.
All right, so good programs, recycling the net zero proposal for the city of Missoula moving forward. A lot of good things happen. And deconstruction is something that the city has been able to implement and leverage through their TIFs with little to no costs overall. Say what you will about MRA, but they work with private partnerships to improve the areas that the developer wants to invest in. So here is some more Ellen Buchanan.
One notable project a number of years ago that we were able to assist was Onyx Maps. And I think everybody's aware of the success of that business in Midtown, but they could not have built what they built there or renovated the building they renovated there if we had not extended a water main to serve those. They were on like a 2-inch line. No fire protection, can't go multi-story. And so it's, we've got a lot of areas in the city that are still deficient in terms of water service. So when they're in an urban renewal district, we're working with Public Works and Mobility to make those improvements.
Yep. So yeah, just a lot of different things coming out of it, a lot of success stories. And I think the one thing that gets a lot of people has like a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to TIF funding in general is because their money that comes out of the property owners of commercial owners. And so Urban Renewal District is the one that directly funds MRA and the TIF funding. And part of that has to do with money that comes out of local businesses here in town, as opposed to residential, which it doesn't take any money from. So no residential, no personal property taxes are put from these districts into the urban renewal district. It is strictly commercial and business operated properties to help go into this fund to help improve those roads using TIF funding. So whatever you think it is, whatever people have convinced you are, I would probably say the Missoula Chamber of Commerce probably doesn't like TIFs, and they're pretty good about getting the word out how TIFs are bad. But that's just my personal opinion outside of the meeting. But that's kind of what I've noticed over the years. It kind of really feels like it's like business owners just don't like TIFs because it's essentially a tax on them to help the greater Missoula area. So anyways, as the meeting went on through example after example, we'll kind of jump ahead into CPDI, the Community Planning, Development, and Innovation. So this is a program that works to help with homeless, urban development, affordable housing, state and federal grants to help matching those funds, those block grants, everything like that. So Aaron Pehan, Director of CPDI, talks about the homeless prevention programs that are funded through this.
We're making good progress in this area in our efforts to partner to provide services and support for people in crisis. Within the next few months, we'll bring our next community strategy to address houselessness called On Our Way Home to Council for Adoption. This plan has already formally been adopted by the Missoula Housing Authority, the Human Resource Council, the City County Health Board, the United Way, Homeward, the Missoula Interfaith Collaborative, which includes their Action Network, and Hope Rescue Mission. In addition to that work, we continue to lead the Missoula Coordinated Entry System, which is the most essential element of any community's houseless response system, connecting folks to services, housing subsidy, and housing in the community.
Yep, and so they want to invest in a lot of programs to help people get into housing, and that seems to be a lot of their focus, kind of moving out of the shelter model and more into an individual case model where they're trying to work with people as best they can. And many of the city has opted out of the permanent shelter plan via the Johnson Street Shelter in lieu of focusing on long-term housing solutions. Much like they put money towards Trinity and Villaggio areas during the pandemic monies, and also utilizing some of the Build Back Better monies as well to help bolster these kind of developments moving forward. And CPDI is behind, and they got their fingers in a lot of these pots to kind of bring together a lot of these organizations. And they also are getting into the rezoning game or code reform game, which requires developers to use that framework to bolster affordable housing based on city zoning that is being backed by CPDI. And Aaron Pehan talks a little bit more about the code reform and how it's being used to basically help bolster that.
The goals of these sessions were to ensure that the new code could meet the community's expectations. Chief among those, our ability to create new homes. These discussions also highlighted a few things for us. most importantly, the need for us to provide that manual alongside the Unified Development Code at the same time, so that developers could review those simultaneously and ensure or decrease the risk of any inconsistencies or misalignments.
All right. So, if you really think about it, I know that people had a sour taste when it comes to TIF and a lot of the money that gets put behind these kind of things. But these programs like CPDI, affordable housing, all that kind of stuff are really emboldened and bolstered by a lot of these programs that are, propped up by MRA, open space, all these kind of things. And our Missoula in a place called Home was one of the original plans that was implemented for the city plan for 2018. This one is focused on the long range plan for 2045. And so skip ahead to additional influx of people moving to Missoula. Missoula County, they're kind of what they've been saying in their policy moving forward is they at least want to provide 1,000 new dwelling units, not necessarily houses, but dwellings for people moving into Missoula based on this current uptick in population and the trend that's moving forward. So 1,000 new dwelling units a year per county to keep up with those numbers if they keep increasing the way that they do. But of course, as we go in further into the meeting, I wanted to pick up the scope of interest from Parks Development, looking up to update a brownfield site near Fort Missoula Regional Park. Donna Gockler, Parks and Rec, talks about this opportunity to redevelop this site and some of the grants being funded for it.
At the time, it was JTL, which was a gravel company way back in the early 2000s. It was to be dedicated in 2012. I think we finally received it around 2018. DEQ approved it as for mitigation, but this is what we have left. So you can see the riverbanks in the photos. They are failing. And also around the pond, because typical of a gravel operation, you remove the topsoil and you sell that, and you remove the big boulders and you sell those, and then you start selling the gravel. And so what we have to do is mitigate and reclaim all of that. It's okay. We reclaim brownfields all the time. So this is going to be the next edition, if you will, of Fort Missoula Regional Park. And I have shared with many of you, this is Imagine Frenchtown Ponds, 2 of them on the Bitter River instead of on I-90. So if you think about it long term, we're in no hurry to do this. We're slowly going through this, getting grants, restoring the site, trying to keep people off of it. It is closed. We have chosen to not open it because of the cost of managing an open landscape like this. This is one of the best birding Audubon sites in the valley and in the region. And the opportunities here, when you think about it in a 50 to 100 year scope, are phenomenal, whether it's environmental, conservation, recreation, economic for this community. This is going to be a massive win. And so we're slowly progressing our way through it, very cognizant of the city's current funding and using every nickel we can to leverage other outside funds.
All right. So if you're into the whole big bird culture, this is a big deal for you out there because Fort Missoula tends to be one of those big places for bird culture. I mean, heck, even when people were talking about the development of the old hospital at the Fort Missoula with residents, they were worried about being cut off from access to be able to bird watch. So they're not doing anything major, but like anything with the Parks and Recreation, they have a long list of priorities and things get added and shifted and moved around all the time based on grants. They constantly writing grants to help bolster and fund these kinds of things, but $80,000 for the Fort Missoula Regional Park ponds, which essentially is kind of like where I would have to say, from what I saw from the map, is behind the military museum in the Fort Missoula Regional Park area. So it's a large area. It's nothing small. It's definitely a big portion of it that goes along the river. So aside from the budget, reflects the demand and use of the organizations, with Parks and Rec having 20% increase in the use of larger groups using fields for various tournaments and activities being hosted. They have plenty of sliding scales for paying for city-sponsored kids camps, and even further with after-school programs that were expanded as a result of the flagship program ending. Flagship program was a major program here in the city of Missoula, and it was phased out, so YMCA and the Parks and Rec department kind of jumped in to get some of those kids, the surplus of kids. So now we talk about public works. probably the meaning I never really talk about, but it has some interesting things where they call them the Mr. and Mrs. Fixes of most things in Missoula beyond street cleaning, snow removal, and hazardous vegetation mitigation. Jason Mitchell from Public Works talks about the potholes in the city of Missoula and how it kind of reflects the immediate need to bolster funding with the streets and roads.
Our key metrics there is pavement condition, and potholes is like the easiest snapshot we can take of how our pavement's doing, because we know when there's potholes that we're starting to see failures. So this is a little bit of a concern. We've had almost 22,000 potholes in 2024. And you can see that it's steadily increasing every year. It's almost double what it was in 23. So it's not a good trend. It's a sign that we're not keeping up with that preventative maintenance that keeps from having to do more significant major repairs.
Yeah, and he also claims that the budget is kind of working at half the amount they would need. They would do better than most. But as we talk further about broken and unfunded sections of Missoula, we also look to our water utility and those efforts to replace and improve water usage in Missoula and save energy costs on the leakage and overall pump stations. So Logan McInnes, engineer for Missoula Waters, spoke about those issues and further elaborated on that.
The primary focus of our efforts since the city took over the water utility is to get caught up on our backlog of replacing old water mains. As the graph shows, we currently have about 10 miles of pipe that are 95 years or older. We have made really good progress in recent years addressing our highest priority water mains, which are our Calamain pipes and our invasion pipes. After this year's projects, we'll only have about 6 miles of those pipes left. So we've been replacing about 2.5 miles per year. So within a few years, we will have replaced all of our highest priority water mains.
All right.
And honestly,
so yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here. A lot of the pipes, like if you saw from the graphic, are 90 plus years old. Heck, they even had some old pipes that were basically repurposed from old World War II ships right underground. So part of that metal was here as well. So some interesting things with that as well. But they have lowered their power usage by 47% just by reducing their reducing the carbon footprint by 17% just in the last couple of years. A lot of good investment in the water system. And frankly, because it was a privately owned company, a lot of the money that they would take from the city of Missoula would be going to the shareholders. And so because it was a private utility, they were able to adjust the current rate over the last couple of years and see that they can really reinvest in our public utility and mostly put it on the ratepayers instead of being more of a taxable thing. So they're definitely looking to move more on this moving forward. But also one of the things that they've discovered, because they're a different department, Logan also did some dabbling within the sewer main infrastructure, and he's looking to make it more efficient. And this is what he had to say about the sewers and the wastewater in the city of Missoula.
and unfortunately, the graph at the right shows that we have even more old sewer mains than we have water mains. There's about 26 miles of sewer mains from prior to 1940, and we really haven't had a rehabilitation program in place for quite a few years. So we know that we need to fund and build this program, and we're fortunate to have the in-house engineering resources to help us do that. Last year, we also realized that our large sewer main crossing the Clark Fork River is exposed and the riverbed and needs to be replaced, likely with a new lift station. And this is going to be an expensive project in the range of $10 million. We also have a significant backlog of deferred maintenance at the resource recovery facility. Fortunately, our rate increases recently have provided a source of funds for Don and his team to start chipping away at this backlog. Like in water, having enterprise fund cash available reduces the amount of debt we need to take on and allows us to complete these smaller projects much more efficiently.
All right. So when you hear the word enterprise fund, you can think of it more as the ratepayers fund and the money that they get from people who pay for water, which is everyone. Wastewater, water, storm utility is one of those base infrastructure items the project can fund for decades at a time with plenty of grants, and that enterprise funds through the ratepayers help improve those utility improvements. Wastewater plant out of Mullen or New Walmart, if you're from Missoula, is by far one of the most efficiently run systems in the state, which utilizes actually nature as in the form of those poplar tree farm and reduce the nitrogen in the water with a mixed use of man and nature to keep your waterways clean. The budget and finance went deep into many budgets within the city department. I just kind of give you a highlight. And you know, it's kind of crazy to really think about some of these projects moving forward. And you know, these kinds of things wouldn't necessarily exist maybe 15, 20 years ago when the city of Missoula was pretty much stagnant. You know, not much growth, just kind of modest growth here and there. Not much investment when it comes to developers, but for the last couple of years, I really feel like the lightning effect was the Mercantile. I always say it is the Mercantile when they tore it down and replaced it with a new hotel building and everything like that. But man, it's been kind of like crazy. Just things just kind of popping off left and right with all these developments. Mullen, you have the expressway, all those new neighborhoods being annexed, a lot of infrastructure being basically put into place, all the money that's being kind of garnished and gathered just to have bolster a growing city. Things are happening really fast in Missoula just over the last decade or so, and it's definitely caused some growing pains for a lot of people. And it's going to be interesting going into the future. And you know, that kind of concludes my city council report. And I'm going to throw it over to a video courtesy of Dylan Albans, who made a video through his music program. Songs from the mountains and valleys, and this is basically a compilation of many of the local Montana artists that you should be listening to right now. And so this was a recent post that he just made, giving a highlight of many artists, and the artist I'm going to be highlighting is Brother and the Pearl, featuring Tom Catmull and Travis Yost.
We've already got an intro for this, so we're going to try and just play this at this moment.
Both of us are going to play this correctly.
All right, here we go. Are we coming in together? I can't remember. No, we're not. Like brothers from grade school, one loved like a damn fool, one stood guard for both of their hearts. If brothers stumbled for some blue eyes and long curls, the other. What's that?
I don't know why I'm not singing that phrase. I always sing that phrase.
Oh, gotcha.
I don't know why, the second line, yeah, I don't know why I did that. I was doing that, I've stopped doing that recently, I don't know why.
Okay.
Let's
all right.
do it correctly.
I thought you were just totally getting into it.
Yeah,
come on. This is awesome. Raise the roof on this one.
This is awesome.
Sorry.
Me saying keep going. Why? Keep going. You're doing it.
Next verse.
You're doing it. Doing it, not ruining it. Go.
All right, here we go. Wait. Like brothers from grade school, one loved like a damn fool, one stood guard for both of their hearts. If brothers stumbled for some blue eyes and long curls, the other watched her from the start. They mind their own business while others stood witness the beauty of blood, tears, and time. But brother was hoping when Pearl cracked him open, love had not struck both of them blind. I don't belong here. I don't belong here. One heart was John Henry, unstoppable when he gave all of himself to the girl. One brother stood watching, one brother stood waiting. Both brothers had plans for the pearl. One night after dancing, the shadows were glancing. His brother was walking her home. They kissed in the doorway, but brother could not stay a gentleman. Walks home alone, he says, I don't belong here. I don't belong here. I don't belong here. I'm taking my time. No, I don't belong here. I don't belong here.
All right, you only get a taste. So we're going to jump right into Pre-Critic, where I prejudge a movie based on absolutely nothing but my biases towards the movie. Kicking off your weekend this weekend is Fight or Flight, but the flight isn't running away. It's a plane, and this plane version of Bullet Train, we bring a world-class assassins onto a plane. You have an anti-reluctant hero try to find the target and protect it while being surrounded by the world's best assassins, blah, 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 and they have to fight their way out, blah, 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 and there's a whole thing, and the plane probably crashes. He and maybe the person he's trying to protect survives. Then the big bad turns out to be not as bad, but the person he's trying to protect might be the worst person, blah, 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 but he's just trying to do his job, and then who knows. It can go in so many different directions with this particular movie, but it always feels like, you know, it's like, it's not what you expect. So it's basically like Bullet Train. It's like, why don't we just do Bullet Train with Brad Pitt, but on a plane with Josh Hartnett? All right, then we got Friendship. If you like the caricatures and the short form sketch comedy, I think you should leave. But in a long format, then this is the movie for you. It's kind of a movie I want to see from a creator of I Think You Should Leave. Comes yet another comedy about awkwardness of making friends from an A24 film, which the trailer looked like it was a horror film, but most likely the cringe factor is going to be pretty hardcore when it comes to a slice of life comedy centered around a complacently lonely guy and his wife insistence on him becoming friends with this dude. Watch as he gets welcomed into a group of friends only to get kicked out, and goes on this awkward journey to get those friends back at all costs. I heard it was a twisted I love you man. All right, and then we got this next one, which is Clown in the Cornfield. I can guarantee that there is a clown in the cornfield, and the clown's name is Friendo the Clown, who kills a bunch of teens in this horror film about a Midwestern town. So essentially, a clown loses their job and becomes a symbol of terror. The teeny boppers go through the big barn burner dance, and the clown picks them off one by one until they start getting a little bit wiser, and they try to fight him back only for maybe the final girl to survive, and the clown apparently dies only to be brought back for the sequel. All right, the next couple of movies that are coming out, I'm going to speed right through them in my speed round. There's a lot of movies coming out, so we're going to jump right in. Mr. and Mrs. Smythe, otherwise known as Shadow Force. We have a couple on the run from assassins while protecting their son and their marriage, but nothing fixes a broken family by shooting a bunch of bad guys. Juliet and Romeo. Juliet gets first billing on this one, and it's a tale about family feud in lieu of a buddy romance that has defined the storytelling genre for what you've seen in a bunch of times. This gimmick is centered around pop music as it is the basis of the story, and they make sure Romeo got 80% of what Juliet made. We got The Lightning Code, when a smart kid has to hide his patent on his invention, but the big old government wants his energy that just so happens to come from lightning to be used for evil got gangs. But, you know, so like E.T., but with, you know, childhood inventions, you know, there's the, what's it called, the Explorers, which is kind of like this kid who invents like a bubble thing that puts him into space and he meets aliens. There's always movies like that. But anyways, we got A Gilded Game. If this movie doesn't have to pay 100% tariffs, then enjoy a movie about sane rich Asians as their willingness to climb and use crime to climb the corporate ladder at all costs. Plus, there's a weird scene of a main guy eating a submarine sandwich or whatever. I literally saw some photos, and it seemed like they have a lot of photos of guy eating a really long submarine sandwich. I was like, what is this movie? Anyways, up next we have a brand new Dublin stuff from the 1945 movie, Devil Girl from Mars, who's just about to have the best summer of her life.
I've arrived. Oh my God, this is the discovery of a lifetime. Oh, I wish they didn't park so precariously on the summit of this mountain. Whoa! Oh, please. You look really cute. Please don't. Ah!
Well, my diagnosis is this girl's not having a brat summer. Is this what happens when you have too many White Claws? What are we going to do? How are we going to snap her out of this? We have to get her. We've got plenty of margarita mix. I thought that'd work. You know, she'd probably want some more White Claw or something. But we're all out of White Claw. Oh, yes. I can see the tears coming from her face. Were you about to say here? Oh, no, wait a minute. There's some hot lady at the door. Hot lady at the door? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Where is she?
Every time someone says hot, I appear.
Whoa! Who is she? Who are you? I mean,
if you don't really mind me asking.
The name is Margaret Caliber III.
And what is it that you want with us?
I want what any woman wants.
Because, like, diamonds are girls' best friends?
Ha! With all the men I pull, diamonds are a mild inconvenience.
Well, I'm just amazed a beautiful alien would want to party with us.
And the party's gonna be quite epic. Epic, I say, out of the way. This girl has drinking too much, and on my planet we have a unique ability to wake them up.
Oh, whoa, how did I get sober so fast?
We can sober up by choice.
Well, that's a unique power set.
Somebody's never partied before.
Whatever. So is this why you're here? To party?
I'm not here just to party. I'm here for a brat summer.
And just what is a brat summer?
A brat summer is for a hard-working woman who wants to let loose during the summer. Some say it's an act of terrorism. I say it's survival of the fittest.
Is there any way we can be part of your brat summer?
Yeah. The wheels are in motion. That you're already in one.
But what do we do to get started?
Well, balloons for starters, honey. Then we'll get all the drinks we'll ever need, some of those sticks that glow in the dark, and all sorts of fun things that we're going to be doing together. And my spaceship has a very loud speaker, so everyone will be able to hear us for miles and come join us for our party by this ship. But if you get too close to my ship, I will blast you and I'll kill you like that nerd who was trying to make a discovery of the century, but I was like, no.
That man was my best friend you killed.
He was a nerd. All you people are nerds to me compared to where I come from. And if you're going to survive the night, you're going to have to work very hard to appease me, entertain me, get the things that I demand from you.
Oh, we'll try our best. I swear we'll try our best.
And you? Well, I have a key to the wine. Excellent. Wine drunk is the only drunk that matters in life, even when you're having a casual day and whatnot with the girls. Wine drunk is the only drunk I want to be, and that's what I'm going to be tonight. I can just see it now. People are going to think I'm dead, but it's just wine vomit. And I pray to the space engineers that you know how to keep up.
We will try our best.
Some of you might not make it.
Never want to mess with those alien girls. All right, let's jump right into some events that are happening in and around the downtown Missoula area. You know, the farmers market is in full swing. I didn't mention it last Friday because I'm stupid, but the farmers market is every Saturday well until October, roughly 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Downtown Missoula, you got the River Street Market, you got Clark Fork River Market. We have the People's Market, and we also have the OG Farmers Market, which is by the Red X's. But the one by the river underneath Bear Track Bridge, you can't miss it. All right, and speaking of market, Spring Market, which is more or less of a rummage sale, happening at Holy Spirit Episcopal Church at 130 South 6th Street East. Popular annual Spring Market at the church runs May 9 and 10, so it's going to be tonight and tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Get a chance. Churches have the best stuff to rummage through. Intermediate Pickleball, Lifelong Learning Center. They do a bunch of classes here in and around town. I'm going to skip right past that. We're going to jump over to Missoula Food Bank. Their ministry distribution, they are usually open Monday through Fridays from 10 a.m. to about 1 p.m. with extensions for Tuesdays and Thursdays. You want to double check their hours because they've been curtailed by Doge. Tiny Tales Tiny Tales at the Missoula Public Library at 10:30 a.m. Get your kids exposed to books and reading. Butterfly Release at the Missoula Butterfly House at 11 a.m. They always have a bunch of new butterflies every couple weeks. Swan Valley Story Time at the Sealy Swan Library. Lunch at Missoula Senior Center at 11:30 a.m. This is also around the same time they have food at the Paul Varela Center. These are locations where you can get access to food and services as well. Yarns and Watercolor here at the Missoula Public Library every Friday at noon. All Abilities Art Club for people with disabilities at 1 p.m. at base. Lego Club, Missoula Public Library every Friday at 2:30 p.m. As we get into the summer, they will up it up to about 3:30 p.m. I'll let you guys know. Get your booster shots are being provided at Washington Middle School. But you know, it shouldn't be, you know, this is part of must-have for middle schools, Tdap, HPV, and meningitis shots. We'll be offering MMR vaccine to children and adults to help make sure you are protected from the measles, which is the something that hasn't been around Montana for 35 years until just recently, Bozeman. Live music with Maggie McDonald at 10 Spoon Winery, playing some acoustic music there. Tango Dance Party at Montana Moonlight Studios. Stellar Evolution, this is at the Payne Family Native American Center. This is also their stargazing events that they do. This is a 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. show. Shortly after the Big Bang until today, the driving force behind the universe we observe is the star, creating light, gravity wells, and seeding the future for our new stars and planets. We got Pottery Date Night at Clay Studio Missoula at 6 p.m. tonight. D&D Guild for Adults at Missoula Public Library online at 6 p.m. Bingo, supporting Sentinel High School Band at Missoula Fairgrounds. Karaoke at the Jack Saloon at 7 p.m. Rogers and Hammerstein's Cinderella this weekend, starting at 7:30 p.m. with a early evening show on Sunday at 6:30 p.m. with matinees at 2 p.m. on the weekend. Circus Italia, this is the big show and big tent that's being popped over at the Southgate Mall. This is a reflecting unique experience of acrobats, comedy, swordsmanship under the grand tent. The stage holds 35,000 gallons of water that perform dazzling over while thrilling the audience with every move. John Floridas is playing tonight at the Old Post at 8 p.m. Joan Zen Band is playing at 9 p.m. at the Union Club. 406 Band is playing at the Sunrise Saloon, playing some country, baby. And then, like I said, the Saturday markets are back on Saturday, and the other events that are happening as well is flagging certification at Lifelong Learning Center. Flagging is a one-day course and eligible to apply for road construction jobs. So, approved by the state of Montana, this class covers essential flagging duties, including proper positioning, required clothing, handling hazardous situations, and using traffic control devices. So, this is happening. This is a one-session class, and this is valid for 3 years. And it's a pretty cheap class overall. Mount Dean Stone, they're doing a trail volunteer day. They help prepare the Mount Dean Stone Community Forest for the recreation season before it officially opens. 10 a.m. you get to hit the ground running on the Mount Dean Stone. This event goes from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Lunch, snacks, and drinks will be provided. Their specific location will be to be announced, and you can follow Five Valley Land Trust to arrange the carpooling. Mimosas, muffins, and moms. Your weekend of Mother's Day kicks off at AR Workshop at 11 a.m. on Saturday at 128 West Alder Street. This is a Mother's Day special craft bar. This is buy two, get one free, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. It's a DIY project, perfect for adults, kids, and skill levels. This is kind of like a do-it-yourself shop where you can make your Mother's Day gifts. MCAT Saturday drop-ins at 1 p.m. This is every Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. We'll try to do this throughout the summer while also doing our summer camps. Hands-on Science, Tech Mania. Spectrum is for drop-in gilded science activities for their museum from 2 to 6 p.m. Tuesdays through Saturdays. Mind you, they're going to be closing this summer on Saturday, so this might be one of the few Saturdays they have left here in the library. Genealogy, tracing, unearthing your ancestors' occupations. The staff of the Allen County, Indiana Public Library's Genealogical Center present a live virtual program on how to discover what your ancestors did for a living at Missoula Public Library at 2 p.m. on Saturday. They usually do on the 4th floor on the Missoula Public Library. Democracy 101, our politicians are failing. McCormick Park, they're doing a meetup there, and I'm going to do it basically on their tone from what I read in the article. Our so-called leaders are clearly failing us as Montanans and Americans. They are failing Montana kids and university graduates, failing Montana workers, failing Montana veterans, failing our environment, destroying Montana public lands, failing Montana seniors and vulnerable Montanans, and just plain failing all of us by cozying up to rich elites and neglecting to focus on affordable crisis. After hearing from a diverse group of speakers, we will march to the Bear Track Bridge. That's 4 p.m. at McCormick Park, where they're going to meet up, Democracy 101. Cahoots at the Jack Saloon is going to be at 7 p.m., playing some country music. Sacred Alley fundraiser, they're doing the first fundraiser at Sacred Alley. They're doing a dance celebration at 8 p.m. The Tomcats are playing at the Union Club at 9. Karaoke at West Side Lanes at 9. Joe Martinez Band is going to be at Sunrise Saloon at 9:30. DJ Chris Moon every Saturday. Chloe Genro and Luke Buschert is going to be at Top Hat playing a free show at 10:30 p.m. And then on Sunday, we got Marshall Mountain Revival. Get ready, Missoula. The brand new trail running event is a celebration of spring is all about connection, and that's what's happening on Sunday starting at 8:15 p.m. So there's a lot of things happening there. If you want to volunteer at the Fort Missoula Native Plant Garden, they're looking for people to help out every Sunday at 9 a.m. ongoing until July 13th. Yep, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff happening. Yeah, there's just too much to talk about as we're looking through there. They got Mother's Day Twirl and Toast on Sunday at Rocky Mountain Ballet Theater, a family dance celebration. And then we have music, they're doing a dramatic music grand opera at the First Church of Christ Scientists at 509 Southwest Higgins. But I'm about done with my show, and I want to thank you guys for joining me. I hope you guys have a good weekend. And for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Scott Ramf.